Well, I guess I'm sort of a modern-day version of straight eye for the queer guy. You were all supposed to laugh. You're pretty serious. Look, we're always hearing comments from people that we don't want the government in the bedroom. But for some reason, we seem to think that it's all right for the government to go into every other room in our house. I don't quite understand that reasoning. Now, part of the question was, should judges decide this issue? Definitely not. That's part of the problem we have here in Massachusetts. Judges shouldn't make these kinds of decisions. In fact, the Congress has the jurisdiction. They have the ability, through the Constitution, to give the judges jurisdiction on certain matters. Their jurisdiction is actually limited. Judges shouldn't be making this important decision, because if judges were making this kind of decision, we wouldn't have gay marriage in any state in the country. If you allow the people to vote on this issue, this is not a civil rights issue. This has nothing to do with environment. This has nothing to do with genes. There's no gay gene. This has to do with choice. In fact, there's a lot of evidence to indicate, now don't get me wrong, I have compassion for all people. As Mr. McCain says, we are all God's children. But I believe it's obsessive compulsive behavior. It's been estimated that 80% of homosexuals were sexually abused as children. I think we should be helping these people. I think we should get gay-straight alliances out of our schools. I think schools should be temples of academic excellence. They should not be propaganda factories. And I think the people should vote in this issue. I'm in favor of a constitutional amendment because I think having gay marriage diminishes the value of the institution of marriage. I believe it's a sacred pact between a man and a woman, and it's so ordained by God. It might surprise you to know that I'm a Christian. And Mr. Frank, you said that you've never met a Judeo-Christian. Well, sir, I'd like to introduce myself as one of those.
Excuse me. We're going to have discussions at the end of, we're going to have applause lines at the end of this whole thing. So let's keep our opinions to ourselves for now.
I surrender the rest of my time.
Sure. Mr. Frank. Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Well, I graciously accept the kind words from Ms. Allen. I appreciate it. I hope it won't appear ungracious, to reject Mr. Sholley's offer to help me overcome the non-existent child abuse. I think the evidence is quite clear that same-sex marriage is of no concern to anyone who does not choose to enter into one. The notion that it is weak in the institution of marriage is nonsense. We have had same-sex marriage in Massachusetts for years. There has been no negative effect, as no logical person would have thought there would have been. As to judges, now that's an important question. And here's the argument. First of all, Mr. Sholley gave his point about Congress. That has, of course, nothing to do with same-sex marriage as it's been decided so far, because they have been decided in 3 cases by state courts. The federal government has no role, the federal Congress has no role in talking about the jurisdiction of the California, Connecticut, or Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Courts. But here's the way it works. In fact, in virtually every state I'm familiar with, even if a court is the first entity to decide it, if the people of that state reject the notion of same-sex marriage, they can reject it, and that's what happened here. In 2004, the Supreme Judicial Court said, let's have same-sex marriage, and it became a reality, and people could judge it and experience how it impacted them. We then had 2 separate state legislative elections in 2004 and 2006 in which same-sex marriage was a primary issue, in which people who were running for office had to declare if they were for it or against it. The result of 2 elections in which same-sex marriage was a primary issue, and the experience with same-sex marriage was a legislature elected after 2006 that voted by about 77% in favor of same-sex marriage. I believe the voters do know what they were doing. I believe the voters showed that choice. And when California, once again, there's going to be a referendum. I think that it is legitimate for there to be constitutional decisions about the rights of minorities. But in fact, in every state that I am aware of, there are constitutional procedures so that an unpopular court decision can be overturned. And I think, frankly, that's pretty healthy. I think having had the chance for people in Massachusetts to experience same-sex marriage, have 2 elections in which it was widely debated, and then go forward with it, has been very, very helpful. And I have to say, I do not understand what motivates people to be primarily or even in a major way concerned with interfering with the happiness of others. Yes, Mr. Sholley said I met a Judeo-Christian. I know Jews and I know Christians. Judeo-Christian seems to me to be one of those unfortunate amalgams that dilutes both entities without producing anything good. But I don't understand why anybody of any religion should say, you know what, my religion is going to be used to make other people feel bad, even though it doesn't affect me. I'm going to set rules for them, even though I am unaffected by them. If same-sex marriage undermined anybody else's, it would be a different story. It clearly does not.
Thank you. We would love to keep going with more rebuttals and more questions. I have a laundry list of questions here, and I'm sure many of you do too, but I think we're running out of time. Yeah, so we need to move on to final statements. Each of you will get 3 minutes, and you can raise whatever issues you want to raise in your final statements. And again, according to the order that was determined before the debate, we begin with Mr. Brown.
I want to begin by taking exception to one of the things Mr. Sholley said. After I spoke about the importance of America defending ourselves after the murderous attack in Afghanistan, he said, I thought a little condescendingly, well, for a minute I sounded like a true patriot. I would hope we'd be beyond that kind of impugning each other's patriotism. I'm not a patriot for a minute, Mr. Sholley. I care a lot about this country. I care a lot about democracy. We disagree on a lot of issues. But this kind of suggestion that I'm only temporarily a patriot doesn't advance the cause of honest debate. I do go back to the charge that has been made by Mr. Sholley that I was somehow responsible for the meltdown. He says that in here. And I want to say, here's the problem. And he says, again, we have a real difference on this. He said that there was too much government. I think Alan Greenspan, to his credit, honestly answered that question. The problem was too little government. In 1994, Congress passed a law, the last time the Democrats were in power before this time, that instructed the Federal Reserve to limit subprime mortgages, i.e. don't let people who can't afford them buy them. He refused to do that. He said, I think the market knows better. I and other Democrats during the intervening years when we were in the minority fought against that. We tried to get him to change his mind. He wouldn't do it. He was backed by the Republican majorities in Congress, Phil Gramm and Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay. And we then tried to pass legislation. I advise you to read Mark Zandi's book, as I said, the McCain advisor. Nothing happened to limit subprime mortgages until the election of 2006. And I wish some things weren't partisan. But I wish I could eat more and not gain weight, although